In the dark, musty confines of a medieval library, a manuscript lay hidden, its pages weathered by time and secrets. This was no ordinary book. It was a window into the spiritual world of the 14th century, a world where visions and revelations were as real as the air people breathed. The manuscript, known as Harley 2409, contained a powerful and complete version of the Cleannesse of Sowle, a text that spoke of a young woman's journey to divine purity. But this book was more than just a religious text. It was a testament to the lives of medieval readers, both religious and lay, male and female. The book's journey began with Maud Wade, the prioress of the Cistercian house of Swine in Yorkshire. Maud, a woman of deep faith and influence, gifted the manuscript to Dame Joan Hiltoft, a nun at another Cistercian house, Nuncotton, in Lincolnshire. The book then passed through the hands of Jorge and Sir Simon Hiltoft, male relatives of Dame Joan, before finally coming into the possession of Elizabeth Lockton. Each of these owners left their mark, inscriptions that told a story of the book's travels and the people who cherished it. One of the most striking features of Harley 2409 is its prologue to the Cleannesse of Sowle. Unlike other versions of the text, this prologue provides a detailed and vivid account of the vision of a young woman named Catherine of Siena. The prologue dates the vision to January 8, 1386, though the correct date is now known to be January 7, 1377. The text identifies the scribe as a special family heir, who is later revealed to be Fleet, a figure known for his spiritual writing. The prologue sets the stage for a deeply personal and mystical journey. It describes how Catherine, driven by a profound desire to turn her heart fully to God, embarked on a path of self-denial and self-examination. She divided her self-knowledge into three parts: her creation by God, the redemption of mankind through Christ's blood, and her own sin. Through this process, Catherine came to despise her own self and love God alone, a transformation that is vividly described in the text. Fleet's account of Catherine's transformation is both moving and unsettling. He describes how Catherine, once drawn to the comforts of the world, now shunned even the affection of her own mother, seeing it as a temptation to be avoided. She embraced her enemies and welcomed the troubles sent by the devil, finding in them a path to greater spiritual purity. Catherine's plea to God for perfect cleanliness is a cry from the depths of her soul, a plea that resonates with the reader. The manuscript also contains an epilogue that is not found in other versions of the Cleannesse. Fleet, in his role as scribe, summarizes Catherine's vision, emphasizing the dangers of self-love and the importance of living according to God's will. He warns against the pitfalls of following one's own desires, a message that echoes his own teachings in Remedies Against Temptation. Fleet's words are a call to action, urging the reader to subsume their will into the divine, a path that promises both spiritual and moral purity. But the story of Harley 2409 does not end with the Cleannesse. The manuscript includes a section on the discernment of spirits, a guide to distinguishing between divine and demonic visions. This section, taken from Raymond of Capua's Legenda Major, is a practical tool for the spiritual seeker, a way to navigate the treacherous waters of medieval mysticism. The inclusion of this text alongside the Cleannesse suggests a deep concern with the authenticity of spiritual experiences, a concern that was particularly relevant in a time when women's visions were often met with skepticism and suspicion. The manuscript's journey through the hands of Maud Wade, Dame Joan Hiltoft, and others is a testament to the enduring power of spiritual texts in medieval society. It speaks of a time when faith and devotion were intertwined with daily life, and where the words of a young woman like Catherine of Siena could inspire a generation to seek a deeper connection with the divine. The pages of Harley 2409 are a portal to this world, a world where the line between the earthly and the divine was often blurred, and where the quest for purity was a matter of life and death. Jean Gerson, a prominent figure in the late medieval church, wrote critically against the canonization of Bridget of Sweden, and also cast doubt on the visions of Catherine of Siena. In his work, De Probatione Spirituum, he explored the authenticity of religious visions, emphasizing that true visions from God typically begin with fear and awe, but eventually bring comfort and sweetness. Conversely, false visions from the devil start with sweetness but end in bitterness and dread. While Gerson did not outright deny Bridget's sanctity, he questioned the veracity of her visions. Catherine of Siena, however, firmly believed in the reality of her visions and provided guidance on how to discern their origin. This guidance is detailed in her Il Dialogo, and later summarized by Raymond of Capua in his Legenda Major. One of the key points is that divine visions, while initially frightening, ultimately bring peace and joy. On the other hand, demonic visions start pleasantly but end in despair. This advice is also found in the Speculum Divitorum, a 15th century devotional text that combines various sources, including Catherine's writings. The Speculum emphasizes the importance of discerning the source of visions, a theme that is crucial in medieval spirituality. The text suggests that true visions lead to a deeper understanding of oneself and a greater humility, while false visions lead to pride and self-deception. In the Legenda Major, Raymond of Capua presents this advice as part of a broader narrative that validates Catherine's visionary experiences. He does this to address the skepticism and criticism that Catherine faced during her life and after her death. Jean Gerson, for example, criticized the papal attention to the visions of both Bridget of Sweden and Catherine of Siena, suggesting that these visions contributed to the papal schism. When Catherine's advice on discerning spirits is excerpted and included in devotional anthologies, it takes on a different meaning. Instead of serving as a defense of Catherine's own visions, it becomes a practical guide for readers. The excerpt from the Legenda Major and the longer passage from Il Dialogo, found in Oxford University College MS 14, both emphasize the importance of genuine spiritual experiences. These texts were likely intended for a clerical audience, as evidenced by the manuscript's content and later ownership by John Jewel, a Protestant bishop. The discernment of spirits is particularly relevant in the context of English spirituality, where visionary experiences were less common than on the continent. The excerpt in Harley 2409, sandwiched between other devotional texts, suggests that the anthologizers saw it as a valuable lesson. It provides concrete guidelines for understanding and interpreting visions, which could be empowering for readers who might not have had direct experience with such phenomena. In the Legenda Major, Catherine's visionary conversation with Christ emphasizes the importance of divine knowledge as self-knowledge. Christ tells Catherine that true knowledge of God and oneself is essential for spiritual growth. This knowledge leads to humility and a deeper connection with God, while false knowledge leads to pride and spiritual deception. The text encourages readers to seek this true knowledge and to be vigilant against the deceptions of the enemy. By including this advice in devotional compilations, the anthologizers aim to provide readers with a practical tool for their spiritual journey. The text suggests that readers can experience and understand visions, and that this understanding is crucial for their spiritual development. For readers like Marjorie Kemp, who may have experienced visions themselves, these texts offered both guidance and validation. In the manuscript Harley 2409, we find a unique compilation of texts related to Catherine of Siena, a prominent Italian mystic and saint. One of the key passages in this manuscript is a marginal note that reads "Ego sum qui sum," which is Latin for "I am who I am." This note, placed next to the text, refers to Exodus chapter 3, verse 14, where God speaks to Moses. The note suggests that the reader was well versed in Latin and familiar with the Bible. It also highlights a central theme in Catherine's writings, the idea of self-annihilation as a path to self-knowledge and union with God. This theme is evident in the passage where Catherine describes her mystical marriage to Christ. She asks God for a sign of her faith, and God responds by promising to wed her in faith. After much prayer and fasting, Jesus appears to her with Mary, John the Evangelist, Paul, Dominic, and David. Jesus then places a ring on Catherine's finger, symbolizing their union. This mystical marriage gives Catherine the strength to overcome all earthly challenges and await her ultimate union with God in heaven. The passage in Harley 2409 is a shortened version of a longer text from Raymond of Capua's Legenda Major, a biography of Catherine. The full text, including this mystical marriage, was later translated and published in England by Wynkyn de Worde in 1492. This suggests that there was a common source text that was used for both the manuscript and the printed edition. Catherine's mystical marriage is one of the most significant events in her life, and it is often depicted in art and literature. It mocks her as a visionary and mystic, setting her apart from other religious figures. However, this mystical element also led to skepticism from some who doubted the authenticity of her vision. The excerpts in Harley 2409 are part of a carefully curated selection that focuses on Catherine's mystical and visionary qualities. The manuscript includes 4 key texts: the Cleannesse of Sowle, the discernment of spirits, a passage on self-knowledge, and the description of her mystical marriage. These texts are compiled under the title. Here follows how the holy maiden Catherine of Siena first began to set her here fully to God-ward. This collection suggests that the compiler intended to present Catherine as a guide for those seeking a deeper spiritual life, emphasizing her mystical experiences over her political and intellectual achievements. The way these texts are compiled in Harley 2409 reflects the interests of the compiler and the intended audience. The manuscript, written in one hand and owned by women religious, was likely assembled for a specific reader. By focusing on Catherine's mystical qualities, the compiler shapes her into a model for visionary women, a different portrayal than the more politically active and intellectually engaged Catherine known from her complete works. In medieval England, Catherine's influence was also shaped by her connection to Bridget of Sweden, another prominent mystic and saint. Bridget had established her own order. The Bridgettines, and Sion Abbey in England was a prominent Bridgettine house. The nuns at Sion were known for their devotion to both Bridget and Catherine, and they played a significant role in disseminating Catherine's writings. The Bridgettine nuns at the double monastery in Florence, known as Paradiso, were particularly instrumental in copying and spreading Catherine's works, including her Dialogo. This connection may have facilitated the transmission of Catherine's texts to Sion Abbey, where they were translated and compiled into the Orchard of Sion. The relationship between Catherine and Bridget, and the influence of Bridgettine nuns, highlights the complex ways in which Catherine's texts were received and adapted in different contexts. In England, her mystical and visionary qualities were emphasized, while her political and intellectual contributions were often overlooked. This curation of Catherine's legacy reflects the specific spiritual and devotional interests of the time, and the communities that valued her teachings. Mary Tudor, the Catholic Queen of England, held a deep affection for Sion Abbey. She saw it as a symbol of her faith and a key part of the country's religious heritage. In her will, she made special provisions for Sion, reviving the abbey and its community after it was dissolved by her father, Henry VIII. Mary wanted to ensure that the abbey, which had once been a center of spiritual and scholarly activity, would continue to thrive. She instructed that the abbey be restored and endowed with land and properties, and she even left a generous sum of money to the nuns and monks of Sion. Mary asked the sisters and brothers to pray for her soul and the souls of her ancestors, including her mother, Catherine of Aragon, and King Henry V. At the heart of Sion Abbey's spiritual life was the practice of devotional reading. The Bridgettine rule, which the community followed, emphasized the importance of reading both the Bible and the lives of saints. The nuns and monks were encouraged to read these texts in their own language, a practice that was uncommon in many other religious houses at the time. The Mirror of Aura Laeti, a guide used by the sisters at Sion, detailed the various types of reading that were expected. The guide explained that some books were meant to teach, others to inspire joy, and still others to help the reader reflect on their spiritual life. The nuns were encouraged to read aloud, to read repeatedly, and to meditate on the texts they encountered. The founding of Sion Abbey was marked by a commitment to learning and literacy. Its first abbess, Matilda Newton, came from Barking Abbey, a place known for its tradition of women's learning and book production. Newton was deeply committed to the Bridgettine rule and insisted on following it strictly, even when it meant challenging authority. Despite her dismissal from the abbacy, the emphasis on reading and book production remained a core part of Sion's identity. Over the years, many of the nuns at Sion owned their own books, and there is evidence that some of the sisters were involved in copying and writing texts. Sion Abbey was not just a place of private devotion. It also played a significant role in the spread of devotional literature. The abbey had close ties with other religious houses, particularly the Carthusian charter house at Sheen. The monks at Sheen were known for their book production, and they often shared their texts with Sion. William Caxton and Wynkyn de Worde, two of the earliest printers in England, found much of their material at Sion, helping to disseminate the abbey's texts to a wider audience. One such text was the Speculum Divitorum, a compilation that included excerpts from the Meditations Vitae Christi and other devotional works. The Speculum featured writings by several women visionaries, including Catherine of Siena and Bridget of Sweden, whose works were considered authoritative and safe from accusations of heresy. Another manuscript, the Latin Codex Sloane 982, contained Bridget's revelations along with other meditative texts. The manuscript included a Middle English prayer, the Cleannesse of Sowle, which is actually a work by Catherine of Siena. The prayer was placed at the end of Bridget's revelations, leading readers to associate it with Bridget's writings. This placement suggests that the compiler saw a strong connection between the two women and their visionary experiences. The text's inclusion in a Latin manuscript, primarily in the vernacular, highlights the importance of Catherine's work in the devotional life of the nuns at Sion. Catherine of Siena's Dialogo, known in England as the Orchard of Sion, is another example of the abbey's role in preserving and disseminating devotional literature. The Dialogo was translated into English and became associated with Sion, emphasizing the abbey's interest in visionary texts. The translation was likely done by a male scribe, and it is possible that an Italian nun, Isar, Magdalena Baptista Baueria, played a role in preparing the text for publication. However, the female scribes and contributors who worked on the Dialogo were often overlooked in favor of male authority, a trend seen in the transmission of other women's texts. The Orchard of Sion, like other devotional texts at Sion, served a dual purpose. It was meant for the private reading and reflection of the nuns and monks, but it was also shared with laypeople who sought spiritual guidance and inspiration. The texts focus on the spiritual life and the experiences of visionary women like Catherine and Bridget, reflects the abbey's commitment to fostering a deep and personal relationship with God. Through its books and its practices, Sion Abbey remained a vital center of devotional life and learning, influencing the spiritual landscape of medieval England. Catherine of Siena's Il Dialogo, a profound mystical dialogue with Christ, was a monumental work that she dictated to her followers. Originally known by various titles, including Il Libro and Il Dialogo della Divina Provvidenza, it became a cornerstone of her spiritual legacy. Completed in 1378, the book circulated in Italian and Latin, with 3 distinct Latin translations by Cristofano di Gano Gaidini, Stephen Macconi, and Raymond of Capua. The Middle English translation, derived from Gaidini's Latin version, was particularly significant in England, especially among the nuns of Sion Abbey. The Middle English version, known as the Orchard of Sion, was a massive and intricate text that required a Herculean effort to translate. The anonymous translator, likely connected to Sion Abbey, created a version that was not just a translation, but a reimagining of the original, tailored for the nuns. The translator's preface and the division of the text into 7 parts, each with 5 chapters, aim to guide the reader through the complex and often disorienting structure of the original. Catherine's original text described her mystical state, where she heard and dictated God's words in her native Tuscan tongue. The prologue, unique to the Latin and Middle English versions, emphasized the immediacy and vernacular nature of her divine connection. This prologue set the stage for the reader to experience Catherine's visionary journey, even though the text itself was a far remove from the original moment of rapture. In The Orchard, Catherine's soul presents 4 petitions to God: to suffer an atonement, to reform the Church, to bring peace to Christians, and to grant the world divine providence, mercy, and justice. These petitions lead to a layered dialogue, where Catherine repeatedly returns to the same themes with various elaboration. At the heart of the book is the metaphor of Christ as a bridge, with 3 stairways representing the feet, side wound, and mouth of Jesus. Souls ascending these stairways move from sinful lives to virtuous ones, ultimately achieving union with God. This metaphor is a central theme, emphasizing God as the path to truth, life, and mercy. The translator's prologue introduces the book as a fruitful orchard, inviting the reader to walk through its alleys and choose which fruits to pick and savor. This metaphor suggests an active, engaged reading experience, where the reader is encouraged to explore the text in a personal and meaningful way. The orchard metaphor is fitting for the Bridgettine order, as it resonates with the vision of St. Bridget, who founded the order with a promise to plant a new vineyard, surrounded by God's grace. The translator acknowledges that the text may be sharp, hard, or bitter, requiring intense introspection and self-examination. However, he also emphasizes the value of exploring the entire orchard, tasting different fruits, and chewing them well for the health of the soul. This approach encourages a personal and reflective reading practice, acknowledging the sisters' ability to discern what will be most beneficial for their spiritual growth. The Orchard of Sion is a testament to the transformative power of Catherine's mystical vision, and the translator's skill in adapting it for an English audience. The text's multilayered and elliptical form mirrors the mystical experience itself, inviting readers to engage with it in a way that is both challenging and deeply rewarding. Just as Catherine's dialogue with Christ is an ongoing process, so too is the reader's engagement with her text, each reading bringing new insights and a deeper connection to the divine.